The movie begins with Mahavir Singh Phogat, a former Indian wrestler who quit the sport long ago due to financial problems and now works a government office job. One afternoon, while watching the 1988 Seoul Olympics in the office, he gets into a slight argument with Harkinder, a former state-level wrestling champion who works with him. They challenge each other to a dangal match. Harkinder, twice Mahavir's size and confident as a professional wrestler, accepts the challenge. But when the fight begins, Mahavir quickly slams Harkinder to the ground. The same result repeats in the next two rounds. After the match, Mahavir tells Harkinder not to feel bad because he didn't lose to an ordinary man, but to a national wrestling champion. Though Mahavir left wrestling years ago, his dream of winning a gold medal for his country remains alive. He hopes to train his future son from an early age. When his wife, Daya, becomes pregnant, Mahavir often looks at his medals on the wall, imagining his son's achievements will one day replace his own. But when their first child, Geeta, is born, she is a girl. Though disappointed, Mahavir remains hopeful. Villagers offer unsolicited advice on conceiving a son, suggesting things like trying on Sunday mornings or fasting on certain days. A year later, after trying every method, they welcome another daughter, Babita. Declaring that the third time's the charm, Mahavir tries again for a son. But after two more daughters, the couple decides they are done having children for good. Mahavir finally gives up and takes the pictures down from the wall. Years go by, and Geeta and Babita grow into teenagers. They seem like any other girls in town, but live in fear of their strict father. One evening, Mahavir comes home to find his neighbors gathered outside, complaining that Geeta and Babita beat up their son. The two strong boys are left bruised by the girls. Instead of scolding his daughters, Mahavir asks them to show him how they beat the boys. Impressed by their natural wrestling talent, he realizes they're as skilled as any son he could have had. Regretting his wish for a boy, he tells his wife, Daya, that he wants the girls to train as wrestlers. Daya, afraid of society's reaction, is horrified, but Mahavir convinces her to give them a year to prove themselves. If they don't improve, he promises to let them choose their own paths. The next morning, he wakes Geeta and Babita at 5 a.m. outside. They find a street vendor selling their favorite snack, Golgappas. Confused but happy, they enjoy the treat until Mahavir bans oily and spicy food. From now on, they must follow a strict diet and train every day like real wrestlers. The girls, too scared to argue, go on a long run, returning with sore muscles. Their usual clothes slow them down, so they wear their cousin Omkar's shorts, which shock the conservative neighbors. The neighbors call Mahavir crazy for making the girls act like boys, but he ignores them. Some days, the girls can barely stand, but Mahavir pushes them past their limits. After getting the girls in shape, Mahavir begins teaching them wrestling basics. The head of the local arena forbids girls from training in his ring, delaying their practice. Determined, Mahavir builds his own ring in the fields. Soon, he realizes the girls need to wrestle with men to get stronger, and his nephew Omkar is the only one available. When Omkar first wrestles with them, he defeats them in under a minute, but their repeated failures help the girls track their progress. Though the Phogat family is vegetarian, Mahavir realizes the girls need more protein, so he argues with Daya to let them eat meat. He even convinces the butcher to give them a discount, promising the girls will promote his shop once they're famous. Through all of this, he never asks his daughters what they actually want, and eventually, Geeta and Babita grow tired of following his orders. They complain that training is affecting their studies and ruining their hair. Mahavir insists they can compromise on their studies, but addresses the hair issue. The sisters feel hopeful after convincing him, but the solution isn't what they expected. Mahavir plans to cut their hair short. Saddened, the girls beg him not to, but he doesn't listen. People gossip even more now, as the sisters look just like boys. Fed up with their father's control, Geeta and Babita skip practice one day to attend a wedding. While they enjoy themselves, Mahavir arrives, slapping Omkar for being a bad influence. Later, in a room with Omkar and the bride, Geeta and Babita vent about their father, saying they wish they had never been born. The 14-year-old bride, facing a forced marriage, quiets them, asking if they prefer their father over hers. In a society that sees daughters as burdens, Mahavir is giving them the chance to achieve something great, a privilege the bride envies deeply. The sisters realize from the comment that, despite their father's harsh training, he is doing it for their sake. The next day, Mahavir wakes up to find the girls already training. They push themselves to their limits and eventually defeat Omkar. Seeking tougher opponents, Mahavir takes them to a local wrestling competition. Since only boys compete there, the organizers initially refuse to let the girls participate, but one organizer argues that a match between genders would attract an audience. On match day, a large crowd gathers to watch Geeta. She is asked to choose an opponent from 3 boys, and when she picks the strongest, the crowd gasps, doubting her chances. The boy shares their disbelief, but Geeta quickly proves him wrong by slamming him to the ground. By the end of the match, the crowd cheers for her and feels disappointed when the boy wins, yet they admire her grit. Eager for another chance, Geeta loses sleep for 2 days, determined to win next time. The girls enter several more matches after that. Geeta continues to challenge and defeat men stronger than her, and their fame spreads. The local meat shop even sponsors them. Mahavir's dream begins to come true as his daughter's medals replace his own on the wall. When Geeta is old enough, she qualifies for the national wrestling competition. Since she has only competed locally, Mahavir intensifies her training, quitting his job and returning to farming to focus entirely on her. He even makes a wrestling mat out of sleeping mats to teach her the official rules. After months of training, the sub-junior finals arrive. Used to fighting men twice her size, Geeta defeats all her opponents with ease and wins a gold medal. A few years later, she claims victory in the Senior National Championship, the country's top wrestling tournament, securing her path to international competition. The people who once made fun of Mahavir now praise him for his forward-thinking approach to international training. Geeta moves to a government-run training center in Patiala, and Mahavir worries that her new coach, Pramod, won't understand her strengths and weaknesses. When Mahavir tries to talk to him, Pramod angrily tells him to leave, thinking his methods are superior. This attitude makes Mahavir even more concerned, but he has no choice but to return home. Pramod starts training by telling the girls to forget all their old diet plans and techniques. The next day, he introduces his own methods, changing Geeta's fighting style entirely. Although her biggest strength is her offensive skills, he instructs her to play defensively, believing it's better for her. In this new environment, Geeta starts to drift away from wrestling. She grows out her hair, socializes with boys, sleeps late, and eats whatever she wants. Meanwhile, Babita reaches the age for national-level competition and follows her father's guidance, training as hard as Geeta once did. One day, Geeta visits home with gifts for her sisters, but she has changed. Her long hair and new attitude show her subtle disrespect for her father, believing she's better than him and forgetting his role in her success. Later, during training, Geeta brags about the new techniques she's learning. Mahavir challenges her to prove that his old techniques are outdated. In a tough match, Mahavir puts up a strong fight, but ultimately loses due to his age and strength. The next morning, Geeta leaves for the city without speaking to him. Soon after, she flies to Sydney for her first World Championship match, a dream since childhood. However, she performs poorly, marking her worst performance ever and ultimately losing the match. Babita wins the national championship and joins the training academy after her sister. She enters with a mindset to prioritize her father's teachings over the coaches. She is shocked to see Geeta isn't bothered about her last loss. Geeta, who used to lose sleep over a single defeat, has clearly changed. A month later, Geeta competes in another international match and loses for the second time. She loses 5 more matches without a single win. Pramod tells her she's not suited for international competitions, refusing to admit that his training failed her. At her lowest, Geeta thinks of her father and calls him, tearfully apologizing. Mahavir, deeply moved, cries too. In 6 months, Geeta will compete in the 19th Commonwealth Games against the world's top players. To prepare her, Mahavir decides to come to Patiala, and he and Omkar rent 2 rooms near the training center. The girls secretly meet him every morning for 2 hours of training before their official sessions begin. They make progress for a few weeks, but Pramod soon discovers the secret. The head of the sports board is informed, and Mahavir promises to stop coaching them in person to avoid their disqualification. Keeping his promise, Mahavir advises Geeta over the phone, reviewing each of her lost matches and pointing out her mistakes. Geeta eventually wins the trials for the Commonwealth match, giving credit to Mahavir, which enrages Pramod. When the championship begins, Geeta struggles in the first 2 rounds. Pramod urges her to focus on defending, but Mahavir shouts for her to attack instead. Following her father's advice, she scores several points and wins the round 6-3. In the semifinals, Geeta faces the tough Nigerian wrestler Naomi. She remembers her father's advice again, scores several points, but the match ends in a draw. In the additional round, she breaks free from Naomi's grip and wins the match, securing her spot in the finale. At the post-match press conference, Geeta credits her improved game to Mahavir. Furious, Pramod becomes determined to take credit for the final win. The final match is against Angelina, a wrestler who has beaten Geeta twice before. Geeta feels nervous, but Mahavir encourages her, reminding her she's fighting not just Angelina, but everyone who believes women should stay in the kitchen. On the day of the finals, the crowd eagerly enters the arena. Pramod has someone lock Mahavir in a storeroom. The match starts without him, to Geeta's disappointment. She quickly scores 3 points and wins the first round. In the second round, she does well, but Angelina counters with a strong attack. By the last round, Geeta starts losing ground and trails by 4 points with only 9 seconds left. Geeta then remembers a special 5-point technique Mahavir taught her and uses it to secure the win. In the final second, she becomes the victor and the first Indian female wrestler to win gold in an international match. Although the achievement is huge, her father's absence dampens the moment. When the Indian national anthem plays during her award ceremony, Mahavir hears it. Just then, a janitor opens the door, freeing him. He rushes to embrace his daughters, proud of how far they've come. The reporters ignore Pramod completely and focus on the father and daughters. The final scene shows real-life photos of the Fogut sisters, who continue to support women's rights and sports in India. And that's how the movie ends. What did you think of this movie? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and press the bell icon for more amazing videos. See you next time.